Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Tackle Shop Live. What's up, Scott Luckoff? Charlie Esterly, I'm sorry, buddy. I don't want to get you in trouble. Man. Hey, you better believe it, Charlie. James Hook's in the house. What's going on? Yeah. Galen Heathcote, what's happening? Dave Richardson. Lake Murray, South Carolina, James. Nice. Yeah, buddy. Larry Shope, what's happening? CJ810, what are you doing, buddy? Happy SFT, absolutely. Thank you. Michael Bradley's here. David Richardson is in the house. Let's go. Matthew Weimer. Absolutely, Matthew. Yeah, Chris Benninger. What's up, Chris? Matt? Yeah. Oh, yeah, we're live. Sorry, I was a couple minutes late. Somebody showed up at the door. We needed some minnows for tomorrow. I never disappoint. I take care of the buddy. You know what I mean? Guy going fishing takes precedence. Some minnows, you hook them up. Yeah, Robert Donahue, Robert Bretz, what's up? David Schottemeyer. Yeah, we got a great crew in the house. Thank you guys so much for stopping in. Mike Hayer's here, Jerry Otto, Steve Havley, what's up, buddy? Conway Hayden. Yeah, we got a great frog show for you guys tonight. We've been talking about this for a while, and frogging is so much fun. We wanted to go over it and talk with you guys about it, and we are going to do that tonight. Tammy, Cayuga Tammy's here. How you doing, Tammy? Yeah. Colby Rohr, Mike Barr. Hey, what's up, Mike Barr? Man, Mike Barr, I saw some of the pictures you caught on your guide trip with Corbin. That was phenomenal. Went out with the SFT guide service, and he caught some giants. It looked like a pretty good day, Mike. I hope you did have a good day. I'm sure you did. Martin Carberry's here. Greg Plank, how you doing, bud? Jack Hinkle, Johnny Kopp. What's up, Johnny Kopp? Tanner Weimer, Jeff Santangelo. I got you, brother. All right. High and muddy, I know, but that's usually the best type of fishing, Mike Barr. When it's high and muddy, man, usually you whack them. So I hope you did. But we got a great show tonight. We are going to talk about frogs. George and I were on a trip Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We went down south to Alabama. We went to Saline, Georgia. I think it was Saline or Salina, Alabama, right outside of Salina, Alabama. And fished down there and got on an epic frog bite. So we're really tuned up with frog fishing. We're going to talk about that, as soon as we get going here. But first, I just want to make a kind of not a final announcement, but this is kind of like winding down to SFT Summer Slam Tournament. It's filling up real quick. We got a bunch of boats in, a bunch of people signed up. We still have some spots left. It's going to be the biggest one ever. It's going to be awesome. The weather is setting up to be some of the greatest fishing down there all year. They've been struggling down there. The temperature's been up, the temperature's been down. It got muddy. Fish haven't been biting real well. So the big, massive wave of fish is going to be there for our tournament, which is in 2 weeks. Not quite even 2 weeks, about a week and a half, next Sunday. Not this coming Sunday, but next Sunday, May the 21st, on the Upper Chesapeake Bay, going out of Anchor Marine, is the famous SFT Tackle, Susquehanna Fishing Tackle Summer Slam Tournament, and we are gearing up for a really good one. I hope you guys can make it. It's a great one. For people who don't really know what it is a $250 buy-in from Shimano, G Loomis, Jackal, or Power Pro. Those four companies. All you got to do is buy $250 worth between the two guys in the boat, because the tournament is two guys in the boat. If you want to go out by yourself, you can. You just got to pay the $250. Or you can split it up between somebody else, and you can have a fantastic time down there. That's your entry fee. And you know what that means? At the end of the tournament, if you had a bad day, you didn't catch any fish, or you only caught a few fish, you didn't make a check, guess what you get? Keep your tackle. And that is your prize for the day, because if it wasn't for that, you would have to pay $250 cash and you would lose it. But we're got a special deal going on here where you're going to do $250 in Shimano, G Loomis, Jackall, and Power Pro. Break it up between all those 4 companies. Buy just Shimano, buy just G Loomis, whatever you want. Buy all Jackall, whatever you want to do. $250 worth, get you in the tournament. And it's a way for us to get new guys into tournaments fishing. And we have a bunch of new guys coming in, and they are excited to go down there and fish. And we're going to walk you through it. We are going to be there. We have our staff there. They know there's a lot of new guys into it. So just ask questions. If you don't know what to do, you ask one of our guys, one of our staff guys that are helping out. What do I have to do? And we'll guide you right through it and teach you how to go and fish tournaments and have a great time. It's very, very exciting. I know George and I got the bite big time when we were younger, and we've been fishing tournaments ever since. So, some good, some bad. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I mean, don't forget, while you're big on emphasizing the new guys, which is important, this is also one of the largest payout team tournaments in our region for the year.
Yeah.
So it's also drawing all the big guns.
Oh yeah.
This is Ike's tournaments, they're paying out of boats, so they kind of got big dollar payout, but we're right there we're probably the second biggest team payout.
Yeah.
Well, maybe third biggest team payout in our region. So you want some competition? The competition will be there.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's it's a lot of fun. It's a good time, and you guys can definitely get involved with it. All you have to do is go to our website, download the application, fill it out, buy $250 worth of those 4 companies, and you are in the tournament. Make sure you send that to us before the 21st, so we have it in hand before the 21st, and you will be in for the tournament, and it's going to be a great time. So, but anyway, this is Tackle Shop Live, and all the time here and every week here on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock, we come on here and we give you a great show, very educational. We try to be anyway. And tonight we're going to start it off with what we call Tackle Talk. Yeah. We're going to get this show going right away. And, but first, Scott Van Leer's here. How you doing, Scott? Good to see you. Bob Austin, Sammy, VH11. What do you say? Troy the Fever. 2 weeks ago, recommended to Tattoo Elite 71 Heavy. Yeah. Frogging. Absolutely, buddy. That one will get her done. We're going to talk about those frogs and we'll dial you right in on that. Jeff Reed, how you doing? Michael, I think the J's silent, but I'm going to say Jwart. I don't know. Sounds good. Ed Ranowski, how you doing? Brian Edmonds, Philip Good, John Sullivan. How are you, Sully? Good to see you, buddy. All right. George, this is a Tackle Shop Live, so we talk about tackle. And what do you got going on over here, brother?
I got tackle.
All right, man. Tell me about it. Oh, first of all, my name's Mike Acord. This is George Acord.
I don't need an introduction.
And cameraman Nick is not here tonight.
Where is cameraman Nick?
He is he's on his way to a tournament.
That dirty dog.
Yep. So him and his dad are heading up to do some tournament fishing for the weekend.
Good for them, huh?
And he was going to come here and do the show tonight and then leave after the show and drive to his tournament, it's like 4 hours away.
Sounds a little far-fetched to me.
I mean, that's craziness. And George and I talked him out of it. Otherwise, he would be here.
Well, I mean, he is a road warrior.
He is a road warrior. He was going to be here, and we were like, we can do this. George and I know how to do this. And so cameraman Nick.
Everything seems to be working.
Yeah, good luck to you, Nick. I hope you whack him.
Yeah, well, I mean, not only that, but it's pretty cool that Nick fishes tournaments with his dad.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
You know, I fished.
That's a great thing.
You know, you fished plenty of tournaments with our dad. I fished
A lot.
tons of tournament. We traveled all over the country. I mean,
Yeah,
that is pretty freaking cool.
that is cool stuff. That is cool stuff.
You know what I mean?
Yep. So what do you got, George? What do you got that's new, hot, people should know about?
I got some. I went a little different path tonight on my selections. You know, some weeks it's just obvious. You know, I have just like all kinds of new, crazy hot stuff coming in. Other weeks, I might pick something that's been around for 20 years.
Yeah,
but it's getting the job done and it's catching fish and it's something we need to talk
well,
about.
it's something that's probably hot at the moment.
Tonight, I went a little bit all over the place. So I got like 4 or 5 items I want to go over that are relevant and interesting and have a little story behind them.
Yeah.
So the first one is a little swim bait, and it's a color from Reaction Innovations in the Little Dipper. You know, a few weeks ago or months ago or whatever it was, we talked about the Sungill being back in stock after being out of stock forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
So now we have the watermelon green pumpkin laminate back in stock
Love that color.
after being out of stock
forever
and ever and ever. And our buddies at Reaction
hooked us up.
Yeah, they sent a couple cases our way.
Nice. That's a great chatterbait trailer. It's a great just on a jig head.
Yeah, I mean, this is a awesome clear water swim bait. You know, if you're just gonna put it on jig head or a little belly weight hook, or I like to just Texas rig it with a bullet weight and swim it, peg it tight.
Yeah.
Great swim jig and chatterbait trailer. Very, 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 very good there.
Yeah.
So, you know, these are this color, you know, for all your green pumpkin swim jigs and chatterbaits, your black and blue swim jigs and chatterbaits, your clear water, just swim bait in general, just a really good color to have. Those of you who know, they're back. Those of you who don't, get a couple packs.
You can just go check them out online, sfttackle.com.
I mean, it's a color.
Right in there.
I've had phenomenal success with it smallmouth fishing. I've had it where that was the deal for low clear water. But for me, I like it in that situation. But as a trailer on my swim jig and my chatterbait, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that color, the black and blue, which they call the penetration.
Yeah.
The white, which they call white trash, and the Sungill.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to have lots of them.
Oh, that was for sure.
I mean, that's my deal right there. So I wanted to tell you about that. I noticed that they were sitting out in the warehouse tonight. So that's good. Next, we have been having quite the run on an old school owner product. It's in their Ultra Head series, and it's the bullet type. And for those of you who are like familiar with a Charlie Brewer slider head, this is the owner version of a Charlie Brewer slider head. It's a 1.0 hook, wide gap, comes in a 16th, an 1/8, and 3/16, and it's just awesome. I mean, it's an owner 1.0 wide gap hook. You know, you can put any type of bait you want on there and fish it, swim it, what have you.
Especially if you want a premium grade hook on there, you know, the original slider head is great. And it's priced right, but if you need premium grade hooks, that's the one. It's beautiful.
They've been jacking their prices up on slider heads. Man.
Yeah, they have.
I mean, the regular bronze, bend it hook.
Yeah.
They're pretty pricey now.
Yeah.
And the black nickels, they're never in stock.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can either wait for them to come in and fish with something else, or you can jump on BKK or Owner. and go for an alternative. You know, the BKK has one, but the owner of this bullet head has a 1.0 hook in it.
Yeah, that's perfect for a finesse worm or
A swim bait. You want to rig up a weedless swim bait, like a little dipper. It's perfect.
Yeah.
You want to Charlie Brewer slider head set up. It's perfect.
Yep.
But it's been it's kind of like resurfaced again. So I thought, it's something going on here.
Yeah.
Everybody and their brothers looking at it. And while I was thinking about jig heads, and what I was going to talk about on Tackle Talk tonight, another little cool jig head that is kind of a specialty jig head is the Strike King Squadron swim bait head with the weed guard. Now, I want to tell you a couple things about this jig head. It's called the Squadron head, which their standard Squadron head is a spectacular swim bait head. That tapered collar on there will hold regular and Z-Man type plastics extremely well. But that weed guard, you can thin that out. So you can leave that, thick for swimming through a tree, or, if you're doing a number of covers like rock and wood combined, I like to take that weed guard and cut about half those strands out of there to thin it out. So what I'll do is I'll come in here and I'll take about half those strands out and cut them off down at the bottom, thin it out a little bit, and then I'll trim it a little bit on an angle like this. I'll come across here like that, trim it on an angle. This is great for dragging a swim bait on the bottom in rocky cover. Really prevents a lot of snags. Slow rolling a swim bait through a treetop or some wood.
Yeah.
when you want a jig head rig.
Yeah.
So putting on your Alabama rig, when you're Alabama rigging in some standing timber, all good. But this bad boy is a specialty jig head. Really like it. I thought, you know what? I'm going to throw that out there.
So that's the Strike King Squadron, weedless Squadron head. Also, you can search it up on the website and really get a good look at it. It comes in four colors, possibly 3 or 4 colors. And again, a nice quality hook, nice heavy hook. You don't have to worry about it bending out. It's just a really good quality jig head. George and I fish it a lot, the regular Squadron.
Yeah, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I use the 3/4 ounce and the 1 ounce for striper fishing.
Yeah, when we go
that's like my favorite jig head for jigging stripers.
Yeah.
With up to a 6-inch swim bait. But anyways, that doesn't really apply to that weedless one, but what a great head. All right, what else do I got here? Top water time.
Love it.
So there's tons of walking baits, right?
Yeah.
We're always talking about walking baits, or we carry all of them. And an old school walking bait that's really overlooked these days. It kind of got really hot again last year. Is the the Rover from River to Sea. That's a 128 size. They also do one a little smaller in a 98 size. They do some great colors in this thing, man. They have a very unique bone. It's got a real nice loud rattle to it. So every time that thing walks, you're just going to hear that on every pop like that. Cast real well. It's got great hooks on it. And the Rover 128, the Rover 98.
Yeah.
Really popular walking baits, but it's kind of like the Head and Zara Spook or the Super Spook. I mean, they've been around forever and they're still, relevant today and in demand today.
Yeah.
That's when you're doing it right. Also, River to Sea, I got a public service announcement for you. All S-Wavers are back in stock in a big way. So we did get a shipment from them.
Mm-hmm.
And then my last but not least, I got to reach behind me here.
Mm. Well, it looks snazzy. You guys are out there to look good while you're fishing. Here you go.
I've got well, a lot of new colorways in Sims gear, period. So if you're a Sims guy, you know, there's several different models of Solar shirt. There's the Challenger, and there's some other ones, and they're both with and without hoodie. But there's two new colorways that we just got in Challenger. This guy right here. There's the back view. Sims orange logo. And this color is called White Regiment Camo Cinder.
Big name for a great shirt.
$49.99 is your price on that. And then the other same shirt, another colorway is Steel Blue Storm. So, and then the other shirts, from Sims, and other pieces of theirs. You know, if you're a Sims guy, you want to check out all the new colors of shirts and Solar shirts and hats and gloves. Lots of new colors of sun gloves. Lots of new colors of buffs. But I just want, these just came in, and I saw Matt had them loaded up, and I thought I'd let you know.
Good. Yeah. Love that shirt. I wore that. I wore this one over the weekend or for our trip, and it very cool. Didn't sweat that bad in it. It was awesome. And I knew I was protected from the sun. So that's all good.
Yeah. And you know what? They call these shirts like that has an SPF rating of 30. And then there's another level of their shirt that has an SPF rating of 50. And I've often thought to myself, I think these ratings are bullshit. And last year at ICAST, we were looking at the various Solar shirts and the hoods. We have them both ways, with and without the hood. I just grabbed a couple. And I was looking at them, and I was, you know, I had to get my order in the next couple weeks. So I was making some notes like this color, this color, this color, you know. So when it was time to put my order in, I was talking to my rep, and I'm like, what happened to this color and this color? And he said, well, they got scratched. They did not pass. They did not pass the SPF test.
Exactly.
That, I don't know the administration, but some third-party company, they have to send all the colorways to, and they have to pass that test to get that rating. So apparently, I was just being a little skeptical there.
Yeah,
you know?
Because they do absolutely have that rating, and they do absolutely protect you from the sun. So
I told them if they got like a whole bunch of them that didn't pass, I mean, I would like put sunscreen on and then still wear them, and it would kind of equal out that way. You know? I'm just saying.
Get some free shirts.
All right, so we talked about the swim bait from the color watermelon green pumpkin. Do yourself a favor. S-Waver's back in stock. The couple cool jig heads, Rovers, some new colorways, and Sims Solar gear.
Yeah, I just want to say that walking thing is like in full swing right now. Everybody's chucking them. There's a lot of guys that are throwing those walking baits right now as the post spawn starts to kick in. So it's down south big right now, and it's working its way up through. You're seeing some great topwater action starting around here. And so bust them out.
I was watching live today, and Brandon Cobb was catching them on a walking bait, a Yozuri pencil.
Yeah.
Around grass.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool watching it. So,
well, that William or Will, Who's that guy we was at fishing at the dam today? That
Will Davis.
Will Davis. Will Davis. He was throwing one too. I saw him catch a couple on there when I was out here working.
No, 'tis the season. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been catching them around here on walking baits for a month now.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's time to go.
Yeah, get the walking baits out.
It's time to
They're-
go.
They're working really well. Ronald, how are you doing from Allentown? Good to see you. Matthew Weimer. If I were you, I'd start going out right now and eating Big Macs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and because I got mediums for you. I definitely have mediums for you. Put a little weight on. Plus, that'll help your balance in the kayak. You know, that'll keep you balanced right. They call it ballast. I'll give you some ballast for your kayak. Ryan Hughes, how you doing? Thinking of coming down to the shop this weekend? Do you have black and blue flake Yamakanukis? Yeah, I think we do. I think we still have them. Keenan, how you doing? Kanan Ford, man, I haven't seen you for a while. I hope you come down and buy a rod. I'd like to see you. Vince, what do you say, buddy? Good to see you. Vince Torpey, good. All right. So George and I, we left Sunday night for a trip down to, was it Selma?
Mm-hmm.
Selma, Alabama, right outside of Montgomery, Alabama is where we flew into, and then drove out to Selma. And just outside of Selma in this town is this ranch that we went to, and it was an invite from St. Croix to come down and fish with a rep group, Duncan and Lewis rep group. And then what's cool about the Duncan and Lewis rep group, and it's a tackle rep group. They sell tackle and hunting stuff, but it's a rep group that for the Southeast and the Southwest. But now I understand that they're kind of all over the United States now. But they're one of the oldest rep groups around. They've been around since the 60s. And Charlie Duncan was one of the guys that started the company with another fella, and it wasn't long after they got started that Charlie kind of took the whole company over, and we got to meet Charlie Duncan down there, who's been around for in this business since it kind of really got started, and it was a great trip to meet everybody and talk to all of our people and just have a good time down there. And they were gracious enough to invite George and I down, and we were the only ones there. We was like just us, and it's a big ranch. So it has all these great big, I want to say small lakes, maybe 40-acre jobbers, lakes, and which Charlie built all himself and built them in ways and stocked them and worked on the fish and tried to figure out the fish to grow the good size fish and everything. And those lakes been around for a long time. And people like, I asked them who all came and fished there, and they shot a lot of TV shows off these lakes. A lot of some TV shows from Hank Parker, a lot of TV shows from Charlie Ingram. He's been down there, and who else would they have? Bill Dance was there for a week, shot some great video stuff down there. So they use them for that kind of stuff. So it's a famous thing from back in the day, and they and George and I were invited down there, and when we get down there, and they give us our own boat, big old bass boat, and we get in the water the first day and we start fishing, and it was just an incredible trip. We caught. We don't even know. We have no clue how many fish we caught, but it was 100+ fish every day. Even the half days that we fished, we caught over 100 fish. So it was just absolutely insane fishing down there. And it was really cool because for George and I, at least for me, it was great because we really honed our skills back in from largemouth fishing. It was you caught so many fish that you could and you could catch them on a lot of different techniques, but we got our skills back on our frog and walking the frog right, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. We got our skills back on pitching and getting real accurate casts. It didn't take long to sharpen them up, but we we really got sharp on our casting accuracy and flipping and pitching and chatterbait fishing, working on some of the stuff there. But more importantly, we got a chance to fish some of the St. Croix rods and really, really analyze the St. Croix rods, everything from Bass X all the way up to Legend Tournament. We fished many different models, and it was good for that because it reassured what we knew, and it just kind of put the nail in it that they make incredible rods. They just absolutely make incredible rods. So, for all you guys that know, that have them, how good they are. Even the Bass X, just how light it is in the feel and the sensitivity and the actions. The Mojos, which I fished a lot of Mojo stuff down there, and that rod was and is just I just couldn't believe it. I knew it was good. I always knew it was good. And George and I have some, and we fished them, but we kind of got away from them a little bit. And it's very, for the money, they are just very, very good rods. The tapers are right. The sensitivity is what blew us away. Really, is the sensitivity.
I wasn't blown away.
They didn't have a rod for.
I've been fishing them. I've been fishing their rods for 20
Yeah, I know,
years.
but you haven't fished them for a long time.
I fish their Legend Elite every single day I go fishing of my life.
It's spinning rod. It's a $300 rod.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about those.
that's what I'm saying.
I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the bread and butter rods that really made that company.
It's actually a $400 rod.
Yeah, that really made that company.
The Legend tournaments are $300.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I said we fished up to. Are you listening to me?
Yeah, I'm just saying I fish.
I don't think you're listening to me.
I fish that Legend Elite a lot.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about what I talked about.
Okay. Continue on with the monologue, sir.
So anyway, that was what the trip was all about. It was really just to go down with our new sales rep team. John Ginsberg is our local rep here that takes care of us in our shop, and John is a great guy. But I didn't really know him that well, so I really got a chance to get to know him a lot better. But then to fish the rods and kind of reintroduce ourselves to those rods, and it was just great. It was just a great trip. We caught, like I said, we caught so many. My hands, well, I know George's.
It wasn't even challenging. It was like
it wasn't challenging.
It was kind of like fishing for piranhas.
It really was. But you can't see it. But I mean, it was so bad, both hands, because I had to switch hands. It was so bad that at the end of yesterday, when we got, we fished till 2:00 yesterday before we flew home, and I didn't get home to my house until 2:30 last night, because John was saying, well, how much you guys want to fish? And we're like, we want to fish as much as possible. He said, well, how late would you be willing to come home? We said, it doesn't matter. Whatever time, just as long as we can get to work the next morning at 9:00. And he's like, all right, cool. And he came up with this thing where we flew back into Philly at 11:30. I think it was 11:30, and until we got out of there, it was 12:00 or whatever, and then to drive home. But my hands were so beat up. It was like a happy pain. It was like that bass thumb that you get, on those awesome days ×3, because we had 3 awesome days. And at the very end of the trip, I was trying to figure out ways to grab a hold of them on the back and pick them up. But the frogs, and this is why we caught so many fish on frogs, the frogs hooks were down inside their mouth and on the roof of their mouth, every single one of them. And you had to reach down in there and push, and you couldn't grip the fish enough to push the hooks out. So you had to go back into the thumb, and it was just so painful. It was pretty awesome. So anyway, that's what we did. That's where we were at for 3 days. So I appreciate you guys for being patient that we weren't here for 3 days, but also for our staff, Caitlin, and Skeeter Steve for being here, working some extra hours for us, and Brian Weimer, the Stallion, he was here, chipping in, and of course, Brian Setlock, took some time and came in and helped out, and covered up some hours. So for you guys, thank you so much. And thank you for allowing us to go down there and get those awesome bass thumbs that we we were just looking at it every day. Just remember it. I got that to remember until it heals up, but it's going to be a while. So that kind of brings us to it because the fishing was so good. We got in this frog bite. George started it. He picked up a frog because he said he's going to throw his frog until he gets something going. And we started this frog thing, and he started getting bit on this frog. And then I switched up and I got a frog right out. And then we put the beat down on these fish.
Well, the interesting thing on these were not challenging lakes. Trust me. I mean, what was challenging with the frog was you had to have an extremely accurate cast. You had to be able to get your cast, like inches from the bank. And in a lot of cases on the bank grass, you wanted your cast to land on the land and pull it in if possible. Because the fish were laying in inches of water and then right on that drop off. So it wasn't the bite, catching them on a frog, getting them to bite a frog was not challenging at all. Making that cast was challenging.
Well,
having the right rod to walk the frog, because they would not, for some reason, they would not eat the frog if you weren't walking it.
That was so
if you can't walk the frog, you're not getting bit. I imagine that you could have drug it around a little bit and caught, one for every 10 that you should have caught.
Exactly.
Exactly. But, that gave us a chance to fish a couple different rods. Because if you have a real heavy frog rod, you can't skip it, and it's very difficult to walk. So you kind of need, if you're a big-time frog fisherman, and if you're a guy especially that fishes hardcover with frogs, which is highly overlooked.
Timber, undercut banks.
Type of fishing with a frog.
Yeah.
But if you're into that, then you know what I'm talking about. If you're not, then this is the part of the show where you really want to pay attention, because you definitely need a rod that flexes a little more. If you're not a frog fisherman, a little more than you might think it should flex, because to skip a frog, you need to be able to load the rod and just skip, like skipping a jig.
Yeah.
You have to have a little bit of that. So that was interesting. And one of the best rods that we fished for that task was actually a Mojo 7-foot half heavy fast. It's exactly what it says. It's a 7-foot heavy power fast taper.
You were able.
It skips a frog real well.
Yep.
And then it's got the proper amount of flex to walk the frog incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like you're walking a little Zara spook out there. And then, we had those reels loaded with 65 braid, and you could hit them. And, we were fishing some fairly gnarly treetops. And some overhangs and some mats. There's a couple mats. So that was interesting.
And it had plenty of power for getting them out of that cover. You had plenty of horsepower, but a lot of guys say a 7-foot rod for frogging. Well, it's not, we're talking hard cover and real accurate cast. So you were pretty close to the bank. You didn't have to throw real far, but even if you did have to throw far, you could throw that thing pretty good. I mean, that tip would load up really nice, and you could get that real long cast if you wanted to, but also at the same time, just like George said, that little wrist cast would put that thing right back perfectly wherever you wanted to put it. And
I don't know about you, but I don't care for a rod over 7.3 for frogging. I don't care if I'm open water. The only time I like a longer rod is late season when the water's super clear because of the grass and it's matted.
Yeah.
And then I don't really want my tip walking rods. But
if the grass is really heavy,
else that I'm doing,
if the
I like a 7 to 7.2 heavy power, fast action, and 65 braid. I can skip anything I want to skip. I can walk. I can fish pretty darn heavy grass, and I have no problem whatsoever catching big fish on those rods.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that. You got to be careful with that statement, because if you were,
well, I mean, I've been doing it for 20 years.
No, I know that, but that's not you forgot about the big mats on the Potomac back in the day.
I said, unless I'm in open water with big, heavy mats,
Yeah.
then I want a bigger rod.
Exactly. That's and I think
That was how I started by saying.
I-
Other than that,
I think
because that big rod's no good for anything else.
no, you could, and you proved it.
It's a good flipping stick.
You proved that he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with that thing.
It was challenging.
You sucked with the casting with that until you made that change.
I tried fishing a 7-4 heavy, which is a heavy mat grass rod.
It's called the slopping rod.
Well, they do in most of their series. They call it the slopping frog.
Yeah, slopping frog
But
rod.
in the Victory, they call it something else. But it's perfect if you're frogging big, heavy mats,
Just chucking it,
big, heavy pad fields,
not really having to be real super accurate.
open water, and you want to get within a foot of your target.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to put a bait, in a coffee cup target under an overhanging branch,
Need a little tip.
it's no good.
Need a little tip.
Which
on
is
that.
what I was saying earlier. Other than the big mats and the big open water, I don't want a rod like that ever.
Yeah.
And if you can't walk a frog real good, and if you can't put a frog where you want it to go most of the time, you probably have the wrong rod.
Going full circle, George. You remember this? Going full circle back in the day when Quantum came out with the Dean Rojas frog rod.
Well, there was two of them.
You remember the first one?
No, he had two models.
Yeah, he had two models.
Yeah.
You remember those? And you remember how we were saying, man, that tip's awfully flexible.
On the skipping rod, the tip was like at best a medium heavy.
At best, a medium heavy.
But the other one had some juice.
And we really are just getting to that right now, as far as really understanding the types of frog rods that are there. We're just getting to that right now. And we were doing it. We were kind of doing it, but we really didn't know exactly what was going on there and why. But this guy had to design some rods for frogging, and it was Dean Rojas. And at the time, he was like the frog man, he was winning everything on them damn things.
Whenever I get to a situation where I'm fishing hardcover with a frog, I don't really use what you would call a frog rod.
No.
I use a 7 to 7.2 heavy fast rod.
Yes.
Which is what I would call a jigging rod.
Exactly.
And
yeah,
unless it's a big heavy mat, that's the rod I'm using.
And
I can put the frog
yeah,
anywhere I want to put the frog.
Right.
And I can extract any bass that I want to extract from any cover.
And that's what I was going to get at. When you throw a heavy or even a good solid medium heavy, because can't really say all heavies are the same and all medium heavies are the same, because they're not, folks. They're really not. So that's why it's really important to deal with a pro shop that really understands these rods, so that you can get the right type of medium heavy or heavy, or in that. But I was really impressed on heavy action rod, how a 7-foot heavy fast, how much that thing has for pulling fish out of cover. I mean, it was amazing. You just load up on that thing so hard, and it would just pull that fish right out of there. And it wouldn't take your line and break you off, because we only had one break off I'm sorry. We had no break offs at all with those frogs.
You're never going to break a frog fish on 65 braid.
No, but you can pull the fish into with a heavy rod, you can lodge them into something. You can get them stuck in there. And this thing just had enough flex that you could let them, when they're in there real deep, they just would flex the rod. It would pull and allow that fish to dig its way out of that cover. And it wasn't too stiff for that, I didn't think.
I mean, absolutely not.
And it wasn't too wimpy.
That's why
wasn't too wimpy.
That's why I frog with a rod like that.
I just feel like
you take almost every rod company that we deal with.
Yeah.
And you buy the rod that they have that's called a frog rod.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, it's no good
for
frogging.
For skipping.
Unless you're on open water.
Yeah.
And heavy grass.
Just chucking and winding big, where you're not trying to be accurate.
Well, I mean, you want to get, say, within a foot. They're too heavy.
Yeah, there's no tip to it.
They're too stiff and they're too long.
They're for like just ripping that fish right out of that hole.
They're for frogging. Extremely heavy cover in open water is exactly what they're for.
Yeah, and they sell a jillion of them because a lot of those big lakes like Gunnersville, you got to have a gigantic rod for that.
Well, they also sell a jillion of them because they say frog rod on them.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying for down there, that's where what they actually designed it for was that big mat stuff down there. So
thick pad fields.
Coming up here to the north, when you want to go to a lake that doesn't have any grass in it, and a frog never enters your mind, after this show, it will. And you don't want that kind of rod. You want something with a tip, and you want something, that has power, but with a tip, and that's that heavy, fast 7 foot, 7.2, man. You can really put it in there, and you can stick it back underneath cut banks, and you can stick it back into little holes back in underneath where nobody else is casting to, and work that frog out of there. And it's just incredible when you get bites. It really is.
I mean, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And for most of your frog fishing, that rod will suffice. It's not the only time a rod like that won't work for most. It won't work is if you're in like just stuff that most of us never fish.
Yeah.
So,
a really good grass year.
Once again,
there might be a time you fish it.
The frog rod of choice is a versatile rod.
Yeah.
7 foot to 7.2, maybe 7.3.
7.3 would be all right with
7.2. I like 7 to 7.2. 7.3 max.
Heavy action.
For most people.
Heavy fast.
In what most companies will call a heavy, and preferably with a fast tip, not an extra fast.
Not a pull cue.
Not
a pull cue.
And a fast heavy is going to give you a nice tip that's going to let you walk the frog. It's going to give you a nice tip that's going to let you make an accurate cast. Mm-hmm. It's going to give you a nice tip that lets you skip. But if you're out fishing an open grass flat, it's going to be good there too.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because the rod George started with was a 7.4 heavy frogging rod, and it was just a pull cue all the way to the tip, and it was an HF. It was a Victory HF rod, so it was heavy fast, and it wasn't,
which is what you want.
Yeah, but it wasn't a good casting.
But it was a heavy rod. It was a heavier than a heavy.
It was. So you got to be really careful. You got to be careful with it. And St. Croix, usually their heavies have a little bit of
you have to understand that rod is designed for heavy situations.
Yeah. So
that rod is not designed for skipping.
Yeah.
And accurately fishing hard cover with a frog. That's not what they built the rod for. They built that rod for
the slop.
The slop.
Yeah.
And, you got to look at where they're from. They have people that fish all over the country, but they're from that upper Midwest, and they fish, the Mississippi River, which is a grass-infested, frogging place, and a lot of open water. So, a lot of those guys are going to carry multiple frog rods. They're going to carry a big rod like that. And I fished that rod for 3 days. And for open casting, it's awesome. The only time I struggled with it was skipping and trying to put a frog in a little small window. It's very difficult. But
and then when
you're doing that, what that rod's made for, and I'll tell you something else about that rod. I probably caught 100 fish on that rod on a frog in the last 3 days. And every time I was setting the hook, flexing it, casting, that rod would make a very nice flipping rod for flipping grass, pitching a jig. That rod would make a really nice swim bait rod for throwing, mid-sized swim baits.
Yeah. You were throwing a mag draft on that a little bit, weren't you?
No, it was too heavy for a mag draft. It'd be great for an 8-inch mag draft, and it'd be great for like a 1.5 ounce glide bait. Let's say a 168 S waver to a 200 S waver,
Yeah.
but probably a 168 better. But so I'm thinking, man, this is a rod. And they don't call it in the Victory. They don't call it the Slapping Frog because that name pigeonholed that rod on them other blanks. In Mojo, in the old Legend tournament, that name kind of pigeonholed that rod. That rod's way more versatile than a Slopping Frog rod.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I was glad that I fished that rod for a couple days, from that perspective. But personally, go with that, that rod that we've mentioned like 10 times so far tonight.
Well, the other thing, George, is if because I fished that rod a little bit when you had that on there, and it was really hard to walk the frog with that stiff rod.
Well, that's what we're talking about. You can't walk a frog with a stiff tip rod.
Yeah. So,
you can, but it's not easy.
So let's visit that. Let's visit walking a frog. I mean, I was dumbfounded that if you didn't have that frog, I mean, literally this side to this side to this side to this side, and moving a certain speed, like back and forth like that. If it wasn't doing that, and then you got out of time and it started going straight like that, 0 bites. And I mean 0 bites.
I'll tell you this much.
It was unbelievable how they wanted that. I mean, it just
that's not a unique situation.
No, it's not.
I mean,
it's not.
In my whole life of frog fishing, and I'm a hardcore frog guy. I mean, the greatest thing that ever happened to me was they invented braid. Because I started frogging with 30-pound big game before there was braid. I learned a long time ago with a frog, you need to walk the frog. So, step one in your frogging endeavors, other than on top of matted grass where it's not going to walk.
Doesn't make a difference.
But, when you get to the edge of that mat, make sure that frog walks about 3 or 4 times without going forward very far. You get in a hole in that mat, make sure you get a couple walks out of it in that hole. It's something about that walk the dog action.
It really kicks those tails. I was watching it real
with
close.
The frog.
It kicks that tail on
that's
the back.
That's very important.
It really flips that tail.
So that's the first thing you want to master. And the way to do that is to leave a little bit of slack in your line. And
slack line jerking.
Just kind of pop the slack. Just leave a couple inches of slack in your line, pop the slack, and you'll very easily see how that frog will. I mean, this is not hard to do.
Well,
so
I disagree. It's very damn hard to do. I disagree.
My bad.
I fish with a lot of people that can't walk a freaking frog. They can't do it.
They should not be allowed to fish. I mean, Mike, we're not going to fix the world here.
I'm telling you right now, it's hard. Yeah.
If you can't walk a frog, quit fishing.
Well, the reason I said that is I want to get more in depth with that. Like, if that thing is going straight through the water, you're too tight to it. Now, what happens there? Even if you don't think you're too tight to it, what's happening? The boat is moving in a forward direction, and it gets to a point where you start to get a bow in your line. That's going to take away from the walking effect. So boat control and casting with the speed of your boat is going to be critical. Do you see where I'm going with this, bro?
Oh,
huh?
I mean,
this is next level shit right here.
I mean, I've never heard anything like this before.
This is next level shit. So even if you were walking it for the first 2 feet on that nice, beautiful thing, and all of a sudden it just goes straight and you don't know why it's going straight, the boat speed and your angle is off, and that you're not direct to it, and you got a bend in your line, and then you're never going to get it out unless you straighten your line up and start it up again. And then normally it's like, oh, screw it, just reel it up and make another cast.
Well, you can also pick your rod up. So if you're trying to cover water, your boat has to keep moving. And that's exactly what's going to happen. But as soon as you notice that bow starting, just pick your rod up and start walking it like this. 90% of the line will be in the air.
Exactly.
So you're going to start like this. The boat's going to start creating that drag. You're going to pick the rod up and walk like this. I'll tell you another great technique for that is when you're fishing a walking bait in current and you're casting across the current. Work your rod up like this and keep the line off the water so you don't get that bow that takes that walk out. So that's real easy to do and keep the boat moving.
Yeah.
You know, so that you can fish a couple 100 yards of an area, you know, in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
With a frog, you don't have to cast to the same spot twice. If you put a good cast in there and you walk the bait out, there's not a bass in there that's going to come back for that frog on the second cast 99% of the time because it's an aggressive nature thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like click, click, boom. It's now.
Yeah.
So, you know, be efficient, you know, with your boat control. And if your buddy can't drive the boat, then you take it over. You know, be efficient, be quiet. Don't cast to the same spot twice.
Yeah, and cast ahead a little bit and get a little better angle on your cast in there. Just ahead a little bit. You don't want to cast too far up because you're getting a real big bow. So you don't want perpendicular. You want just ahead a little bit and really control that line. As soon as you start seeing that loop get starting, then you can go high, straighten it back out, and then get it to go again. But I fished with a lot of people that really didn't even know about walking a frog. I mean, I fished with a lot of people that had no clue, you know, and
not gonna be able to fix that.
And
we're trying.
No, you can
we're
fix
trying.
it. That's because they didn't know. They didn't know about walking a frog, and you know, it's hard for me not to tell people, but in a tournament situation, you know, when I was watching this, you know, I'm like, well, you know, it's a tournament situation, so because I like to go up and then turn around if it's really good frog and come back down through it again, but. It makes such a huge difference about that walk. You know, I just can't believe, I really can't believe the difference it really makes. So I guess that's why I dwell on it so much every time I talk to people and hear about it. And I just dwell and dwell and dwell on it. And they're like, you know, I think they're probably,
I hadn't noticed.
I think they look at me like I'm crazy when I'm talking about walking a frog and how important you got to make sure you got to hold a rod. You got to, you know, as we really go over it hard with guys in here. And that's because it's so critical and it will change your frog game. I mean, especially in open water, target fishing, undercut banks, trees, you know, just open water fishing. It just changes everything about frogging. So, you know, make sure you have slack line in there and make sure you know how to control it. Very important. Okay.
Boy.
Now let's talk about great frogs that are easier to walk and not walk.
Yeah. Not to mention some of the things you can do to make a frog walk a little better.
Yeah.
Like one of the most easiest, best known tips of all time, which is to shorten up one side of your skirt. Just very simply take one side of your skirt and cut it so that one side is half of an inch shorter than the other. That creates a much easier walking frog.
Yeah.
Now, a popping frog, like a Spro popping frog, will walk awesome. And then we tend to call the standard frog a walking frog.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a Spro bronze-eye frog or a snag-proof Bobby's Perfect or a snag-proof fat frog. And these three are what are most commonly called walking frogs. Pointy nose, standard profile. Fat frog has a little bit of a different leg setup. Fat frog does walk incredibly well.
Yeah.
Some of the things in frog fishing are, you know, that you'll learn with a lot of time spent is the construction and the makeup of a frog. You know, people really get talking about how stiff and hard the body material is. I mean, this Spro popping frog is noticeably has a little more stiffness to it than say the bronze-eye, but I don't find that to be such a critical. If it does that, you're good very easily. Another problem with frogs is they take on water. So the more beat up they get, the gap around the nose opens up and you start taking on water. So you'll notice if the frog's very hard to work, bring it in and you'll be able to squeeze some water out of it. And it's a problem, and different manufacturers have tried different things. Snag Proof has done something pretty interesting. They've designed a connection on the line tie that kind of prevents water from coming in, and also they have a little drain hole in the back that the force of the cast kind of will spray the water out of, and the drain hole doesn't really let water in. So I mean, these frogs, they're going to get water in them a little bit, but they're pretty good at it. So one of the things I would recommend that you do, try a couple different brands, develop some confidence in a brand or two. Whether it be, one of the many, many brands of frogs out there. And, for the majority of your frogging, you're going to want some walking frog and some popping frog, which is a little bit confusing because the popping frog walks real good also. This actually skips a little nicer. The walking style frogs actually skip a little nicer. I mean, the popping frog skips. Don't get me wrong on that, but this skips a little easier. So that might be something for you to consider as you're learning to skip that frog and fish hard cover. The next big thing with the frog is color. And I think if you take a stroll down our frog aisle, you'll agree that it's perhaps gone a little far with the colors.
Definitely has.
There is every color in the world. Now, one thing I'm noticing, especially in our area with the snakeheads, the brighter frogs tend to really be big for them. What I've learned in frog fishing, me and Mike, we kind of fish. If I was going to power rank them, black, white, and what we call natural red, or what Spro calls natural red, what a lot of companies call natural red. That would be our power ranking. From there, you may or may not run into situations like one of the frogs that we always carry with us is what we call bluegill frog.
Yeah. Which
has a lot of white on the belly, but also a significant patch of orange on the throat. And, obviously the tail has got multiple strands in green, white, orange. And there are times when and whether they're feeding on bluegill, perch, or whatever, there are times when that frog on a really sunny, calm day with clear water can be a serious player. So you might, as the old saying goes in tackle, the longer you fish, the more variety of color that, because you have a situation where you just crushed them on a particular color, you're going to add a little bit of that to your mix. But black, white, natural red, those three colors are going to carry you through the vast majority of your frogging. Would you agree with that, Mike?
I mean, you don't need to get crazy with it. Absolutely. For us, we don't really get crazy with it. That's what we throw. But everybody has their preferences, and that's why they make jillions of frogs. And
yeah, but I mean, what would you rank as your most key important colors?
That's it.
Black, white, and natural red.
I throw black and white. I mean, I
throw black and white 99% of the time.
And then back in Snag Proof when they make Fred's Perfect Frog.
That was the bluegill.
No.
White on the belly, orange throat, green back. The legs had white, green, and a couple
No,
strands of orange. on them.
the legs were all white.
Had a little bit of green in it and a couple strands of orange. But it was that shaddy bait fish,
Oh.
perchy,
It's real white,
bluegill looking.
real white legs on it. That's
frog.
is what I
Very good.
is what I liked about it. And that was it. But it had a white belly.
With an orange throat.
Yeah, but but it was a white belly, kind of a white frog. But there was that there's guys that have particulars that they like that also works. But if you're just getting into it, you could go that route and you'll be great. You'll be good. Trust me, you'll be good.
Now the popping frog versus the walking frog. Where do you fall on that?
I'm probably 90% popping frog. Honestly, I think
I'm probably 99% popping frog.
I think a popping frog is really super easy to walk, and it just makes that little bit of sound to me in my mind that gives it that little extra attraction, and if you want to work it harder and really walk it harder, you can really, if it's a little bit choppy or wind or whatever, or it's just a little, you want more noise, you can make it get real noisy, and create a lot of disturbance, or you can do it real subtle like we were doing a lot, just that real subtle little movement, and it's nice and subtle too. I think it's super easy to walk.
What I found is you can catch fish in windy conditions on open water grass, but the popping frog is a difference maker and you want to pop it.
Yeah.
But what I really found in that scenario is sizing up. I found sizing up. The 90 bronze-eye frog.
Yeah.
Which is the big boy, the Papa frog or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
I think I might carry like 2 of them in my box for that situation. I mean, let's face it. Generally speaking, you're not going to choose to go out and fish a big open water grass flat when it's really hoofing.
Yeah.
But I have had a couple. I had once on the Potomac and once on the Chesapeake, a couple of awesome experiences. And I really think it has to do with what that frog sounds like when it lands on the water. I mean, it literally sounds like you shot a pigeon and it flopped into the lake. The other thing that's becoming and we kind of delved into this the other day when we were talking about these tournaments down south, is the 70 popping frog. Can't really tell there, can you? Let me see if I can make this better for us.
Eric, yes, we have it right here. Bobby's perfect frog right here. We carry it. And Bobby Barrick is a phenomenal frog fisherman. He has great videos out there also about frogging and the way he frogs in California.
70 versus standard. Now, personally speaking, the first thing on the 70, I'm giving it a serious haircut. I do not want those legs that long. I'm going like that. I'm making them this long. But I noticed with the 70, it's got that flopping sound and it just moves more water. So, adding a little variety size-wise has paid big benefits for me. And that's that 70 popping frog and that 90 big daddy or big papa frog or big daddy frog. So that's a little bit of color. That's a little bit of size. That's a little bit of style. Another aspect of frogging that's equally as important in my mind, and Mike and I really found this out this past weekend. When you can catch 100 fish on a frog, you can really dial in your frog game.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that we've always done this, but we fished a slower reel to remind us why we fish a faster reel. I mean, Mike, I know Mike's going to back me up on this. I would say, there's two situations at a minimum where you need to get into the 8 range. Now some companies are 8 to 5, some companies are 8 to 3, some companies are 8 to 2. If you look at the charts on the reels and you look at the gear ratio and then you look at the inches per crank and then you look at the 7, you'll notice a lot when especially when I'm talking to you about reels, I call them 6s, 7s, and 8s.
Yeah.
Because there's somebody at home in their basement that will measure the line and raise holy hell with the poor bastard that made the manual for the reel company.
Yeah.
It's not an 8.5 ratio. It's an 8.4 ratio.
Right.
And take it to the Supreme Court. So,
yeah.
That's why you get these crazy gear ratio numbers. But look at the inches per crank. And then think about this. You can hardly, the number one struggle you have frog fishing is catching up with that fish.
Especially in open water.
They will eat that frog on the run and they are hammered down. But on all forms of frog fishing, by the time you're done setting the hook, you dig your curly toes into the carpet of the boat deck and pivot from the hip, and you got to gather that slack up and get that rod back in front of you.
Yeah.
The 8 is where it's at.
Yeah. Well, we went on this trip and Caitlin asked me to shoot a lot of video. So of course I didn't. I was too busy fishing, but I did shoot one video of George hooking a fish on a frog. And what's really cool about that video is if you watch it all the way through, because I don't know if she clipped it off or not, but I showed the lake we were on and then, just good panorama. And then he was throwing his frog and I zoomed in on it. If you watch the frog coming through the water and his fish takes it and how fast that fish from where he took it to where that fish was going, it was a rocket ship, and it goes to show. I wish I would have had another camera on George trying to reel to catch up to that fish.
I was turning that reel handle.
As fast as you possibly can.
You're going to put more.
Was that a 7.4?
That was an 8.
That wasn't 8 to 1.
8.5.
That wasn't 8.5.
Well, again, back to my point on gear ratio.
Yeah. Well, whatever. It was an 8.
Yeah.
It was an 8, and he played hell to keep up with that fish. But I think if he had a slower gear ratio reel, there's no way he would have caught up to it. this thing, it's a great video. It's a short little video. I'm sorry, guys. I should have spent more time shooting video, but that means I'd have to watch George fish, and that would really piss me off. And and we were catching him. We were having so much fun. So I did get that video and we did shoot it, but you watch that fish hit that frog, and it's gone. It's a really cool video.
Yeah, and that's why that 8 reel is so important. In flipping and frogging, the 8 reel is where it's at. No doubt, no question about it. And then when you're doing your research, look at the charts and see that inches per crank, okay? And it's not so much what the number is. Like, for example, Why
can't we just make it 8? Just buy an 8.
Because that guy in the basement,
I don't care. Just,
I don't either.
When we talk, we should just say,
but the lawyers do.
Your fast 8 to 8.
That measurement, let's say a 7 reel is like 34 or 33 or 32. The 8's like 39 or 40. And it's not that's not the amount. The actual inches is not the critical part, because by the time you make a cast, that number's smaller, but the relationship is the same.
It's faster.
You're still cranking in.
It's faster.
You're still cranking in, 6 or 7 inches more per crank, which is a lot. There's 5 cranks. That's 30 inches a line. Okay. So definitely 8 ratio reels rock in frogging. Plus, a lot of times in frogging, especially when you're hardcover or grass edge fishing, 3/4 of every cast is wind back.
Yeah.
Like, you're not fishing, in most cases, the frog. Like, if you're fishing a boat dock, or if you're fishing a overhang bank, or you're fishing a treetop, you're going to walk it a couple feet out past that, and then you're going to burn it in and make another cast. So that, again, it's more efficient. Adds up, man, when you're trying to make a boatload of casts in a day's time.
Mhm.
So the 8-ratio reels rule.
Yep. Absolutely.
And, the drag is important. This is a flipping and frogging. These are things where you're going to realize whether or not your drag will lock down.
Yeah.
You want the drag to all but lock down.
Yep.
You're going to be at your highest drag setting here because when you hit that fish, you can't have the drag slipping.
Not even an inch.
And if it's a 7-pounder and it decides to turn and dive back into that mat, he can't be ripping line off your reel.
Yeah.
You have to not allow that to happen.
Yep.
So drag, gear ratio, rod, line, 65 braid.
Yeah.
If you're a purist or some kind of a sportsman or you don't like a 65 is too savage for you or whatever, go to 50. Do not go below 50.
And do not use anything but braid.
Oh, you can't
Sorry.
frog. Yeah, no.
Cannot frog with
No.
anything.
No.
Joe Gallo, how are you, buddy? Good to see you. Mega Bass, Tequila. It's a great frog. They're everybody. The Kira frog that somebody mentioned on
That's
Jack.
a rod.
Which one?
It's spelled all wrong. That's why you don't understand.
Oh,
He's
Oh,
trying
for
to spell.
frogging.
He's trying to spell baccarat.
oh, Baccarat. Yeah. Oh, but for frogs, I don't care whose company you use. They're all good. There's a lot of good ones in there, and there's some of them. Like I was fishing a frog that after we burned up all of our frogs and chewed them into small little pieces. I was fishing another frog, and I couldn't get it to walk good. It was really tough to make it walk. I try, and I would walk it, but it was
Did you trim the leg?
so labor intensive. Trim
The
George.
leg.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
big
think
difference.
I think
maker.
I did, but it was so difficult to walk that particular frog, and I don't even know what it was. We got it from the guy that when we were down there, we asked him for some extra frogs because we burned. I'm telling you, everything we took down, we destroyed. And so find a frog that walks well for you and stick with it. It doesn't. It's 90% of the time it's not a brand thing, and 90% of the time it's more like this: a size. It's a slight color variation, a black or a white, but also these types of colors.
So the interesting thing with frogs is the legs, the skirts. This is silicone skirting. Most of it's round silicone skirting. It's just a big endless loop in there. Okay. And here's what's interesting. We already talked about cutting, close to a half an inch off one side. Snip, right? That makes walking the frog a little easier. It's undeniable.
It helps.
Okay?
It
It's undeniable.
It definitely helps.
But if you spend time fishing with different people, particularly if you're you fish a lot of draw tournaments, you're going to draw people that fish from all different parts of the country.
Yeah.
And you're going to notice in places where there's super heavy grass mats. And I've seen this from a lot of the tournament people I got paired up with from like Alabama and other southern states that have, famous lakes with big giant grass mats. Their legs on their frogs, because this is what they're used to, are about that big. So they're cutting everything off except for that.
They make a frog without any of those legs on them.
Somebody used to.
Yeah.
I know that much.
Yeah.
And then they are pushing little split shot, little BB split shots, or they're getting some buckshot or something and shoving that in that where the hook comes in to make this heavier. They're putting a glass rattle in there. They're putting that shot in there. And what they want is they want that frog to land on that mat and sink in the mat. Because the top of that mat at that time of the year is what we call cheese. And cheese is a algae, scummy, chartreuse green algae that grows on top of the grass. It's not the grass. It's on top of the grass. Yeah. And you want that frog heavy enough to flop down in there And you know it's right when you're working it and it's leaving a trail sunk down in that cheese.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, why they're shortening the leg up, I don't know. It's a regional thing. I don't know.
They talked about that. Like
It might make it sink down in the grass a little better. I don't know. But
short strikes.
That's something that they do. Well, I don't know about that because there's literally no possible way that fish can see the frog.
That's what they said.
Because it's 100% like this ceiling right here. But whatever the reason is, so, the point of the story is I don't put a ton of emphasis on the length of the legs. I tend to keep my Poppin' Frog 60 from Spro, which is my baby, like that, and trim this side off. That's what I tend to do myself. I fished with.
I'll tell you this right now.
I fished with lots of guys
in open water
from the South who trim theirs tight.
Yeah,
and that's what they do.
I disagree. In open water.
I'm just saying that's what they do.
I know, but I know, and as far as I think the legs are important in open water because if you watch that frog when it's walking, it really lets those legs really.
I agree.
Put a lot of action out there. And,
plus, I think they're putting a little drag on there to make it walk a little better.
Yeah, but I think it's an attractant too. I really think it's an attractant.
Yeah, I agree.
I do. In open water fishing, absolutely.
I agree.
So
that was something interesting about those legs.
So we kind of got all that kind of stuff covered. There is a bunch of tricks that people do to frogs that we're not really going to get into. That's one that's the best one that George just said about adding a weight to it, especially in a real sloppy, heavy duty mats. That really does help them. And it probably helps when they blow up on it to drop more quickly. It's heavy. But how about freaky frogs?
Yeah, I mean,
all the different styles of freaky frogs.
I mean, obviously, when Teckle brought out the Sprinker, everybody just went off.
I honestly think Brandon Cobb was throwing that today.
So this is like a hybrid. I've got 3 of them here that I call hybrids.
Mm-hmm.
And this is basically how do I make a whopper plopper and a frog combo? And my whole concept is from a sales perspective because the whopper plopper sold, enough money to alter the economy of a small country. And I'm a guy that makes really cool frogs. This is Teckle, and they make really cool frogs that you may have fished under other names. And then, I'm obsessed with this whole concept here. Boom. And we all went crazy and had to have like 3,700 boxes full of them.
Well, when you watch,
and this bad boy does play.
Oh, I guarantee you watch tomorrow.
This bad boy plays.
You watch tomorrow and you watch Brandon Card fishing that type of grass he's fishing. It's more of an open kind of waterish kind of stuff we were fishing.
Yeah.
And he would throw it all the way across that little bed and he'd bring his thing across. He just straight reel it right over top.
Yeah.
I honestly think that's what it was.
Well, we've had a couple days.
We didn't get a good.
We've had some moments on this thing.
Yeah. I didn't really get a good look at it.
I mean, they will flat out eat this in a certain circumstance.
Yeah.
It kind of gives you it's kind of the concept of how do I fish a whopper plopper through a grass bed?
Yeah.
So, and it kind of has that sound, that plopping sound.
Yeah.
It's a little more subdued, but that's definitely makes the list of the hybrid frog.
Yeah.
And in your
spawned off a whole bunch of stuff.
In your journey to become frog masters, first you have to see the frog, then you have to be the frog. So you got to fish them all, right? Now, next up, and arguably as important, is the flapping frog. which actually I'm going to give full credit to the Southern Lure Company, the Scum Frog Bigfoot. I'm also going to give credit to Snag Proof for creating this frog.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, Spro. And this bad boy has got the, it's kind of like the merger of a toad and a frog. And these are what we call reeling frogs.
Yeah. Throw them out, reel them back.
These are reeling frogs. Okay.
Straight liners.
Different sounds. This is more of a pitter patter. This is more of a, just a drone, like a little. Definitely check them out. This is the Flapping Frog from Spro. It's pretty awesome frog. And this is the Teckle Sprinker from Teckle. And then the third hybrid that's been making some noise, and it started with Teckle, and now Spro's got into it. And blades instead of skirts. Actually, we first saw this years ago with Depths. Or was it Depths? Bass Risky? No.
No, it wasn't Bass Risky.
Wasn't Bass Risky.
It
was another one. But anyways, the blades, and this is called the Bronze Eye Blade. There's a couple of them out there. Teckle has the honker, whatever.
Yeah.
Showing it to you, can't tell you about it, never fished it.
Yep.
There is some sound there. So
yeah.
We can only hypothesize on that, and it only made the lineup to show alternate style frogs. So we call those hybrids,
freaky frogs.
And if I had my frog box here, and if Mike had his frog box here, ours would probably be pretty similar. I got a couple sprinkers, I got a couple flappers. And I got a whole lot of popping frogs and walking frogs. A couple different brands. I like Snag Proof and Spro, and not necessarily in that order. I like them both.
Most people will end up with, a dozen or so frogs in your boxes. It just, it just happens. You fish your main ones that you have 3 or 4 of each one, and then you have, your freaky frogs in there, and then some alternative colors that your buddy told you about on a certain lake or a certain area of fish. This kind of color is a little bit better for there. So you'll end up with 12 or 13 different styles of frogs and colors, and it fills a 3,600 up, and that's
3,700.
Yeah, 30. Deep. I mean, yeah, 37. You'll fill a 3,700 up with them eventually, but it's 12 or so different baits. Some of them you got, like I said, 3 or 4 deep. Other ones you might just have one of. But point is come up with your own favorite frog and get your confidence in it, and come up with a frog that allows you to walk it properly. If you can't walk the frog and you think you're doing it right, and then there is some frogs that just don't walk very good. And I experienced one this past week, or these past couple days, when we ran out of the Spro frogs and some of the other frogs that George and I brought down. They just don't walk real good, and you got to work a lot harder at it, and you got to be really precise with it. You got to be seriously precise with that. You got to be a good walker to make it walk. But even I was struggling with it, which I know how to walk these things really well, and even I was struggling with that one. And I only got a few feet of good walk out of them. If it's just got any kind of little bend in the line, just the smallest bend, it would just screw up right away, and you couldn't make it walk. So come up with a frog that is, works for you, and stick with it. And that's your frog, and don't worry about what everybody else says. And they're all good. That's why we carry George. That's why George and I carry, so many different frogs in here, because they're all good. They all do something great, and they're all this guy's favorite and that guy's favorite and this guy's favorite. And that, we always talk in our experience, and because we just had such an incredible 3 days of frog fishing, and really concreted how we fish and how important it is of what we do. Because literally the other boat that was there, didn't happen for him. Did not happen for him at all. And we caught literally hundreds and hundreds of fish on these freaking things.
I mean, I don't think they were frogging.
I think they tried.
I think they were catching their fish in other manners.
Well, they just weren't getting bit.
For me, the frog's been a major important bait for me for many, many years. Ever since there's been braid. Like before braid, I can remember fishing tournaments with 30-pound trilene big game and trying to set the hook with a flipping stick and hitting the fish like 5 times and landing, one for every 5. So, I mean, it's a major effective bait, which is why we seem to talk about it about 3 times a year.
Yeah.
So I think the untapped resource for 90% of all of us is frogging where there is no vegetation.
Open water frogging.
Hardcover frogging.
Yeah.
Cut banks, overhanging banks, boat docks.
Yeah.
Laydowns. Think about a laydown. You're fishing down the bank. You come up to a laydown. You're gonna throw a spinnerbait at it. You might throw a buzz bait around it. You're gonna throw a square bill. You're gonna flip a jig or a Texas rig. But are you gonna skip a popper up the trunk and into the gnarliest backwater cover of it? Of course not. Are you even gonna throw a popper anywhere near it? Of course not, because your treble hooks are gonna get snagged. But if you skip a frog up inside that tree, the shade pockets, after you fish the outer edges of that tree with whatever, and then you skip that frog up in them shady areas.
Yeah.
I mean,
huge advantage.
It's topwater fishing a laydown.
And nobody else is doing it. Nobody's doing it.
How about a boat dock? How about trying to skip a pop R under a boat dock? Ain't happening unless your name's Zell Rowland. Okay. But a frog,
shout out to Zell,
skipping a frog under a boat dock, it's where no top water has gone before. Cut banks. A lot of times in a lot of these lakes that we fish in the summer months, every drop-off bank has all kinds of trees and whatnot hanging over the water and all kinds of bluegill hanging out underneath there, in the shade, taking advantage of minnows and insects falling off the trees. And you just watch and see. You can see little dimples and stuff.
Yeah.
Those bass are stalking that. You skip that frog up underneath there. So, frogs on hardcover is my note.
Yeah.
Untapped resource. And I mean, you can't really get into it in super detail, but
yeah,
it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. So there you have it. I think we covered it pretty well, from rods to reels to line to styles of frogs to how, ways of fishing it, some little tweaks, the style, the different frogs. Now, we didn't talk about toads because that's totally different.
I got them here and I'm ready to go. I got them here and I'm ready to go.
Nah, we talked about
my hooks here.
We're gonna do a toad.
Got my little hook tricks here.
Toad thing another day.
Got tons of time left.
Sure, have at it.
So, kind of like your winding frogs is your toad. The Zoom horny toad, the Stanley ribbit, and on and on and on. I mean, every company makes a nice toad bait. Some of them are louder than others, but same concept. Now, these, you can skip these bad boys like nobody's business. You can rig them multiple ways. Now, I'm kind of old school myself. I still do the regular old single hook. Just a regular old, this is a Mustad. This particular one's a 5/0. They make it in a 4/0 and a 5/0 with the screw lock. You know, you screw the screw into the head of the toad, and then you rig it with the hook tucked in on the back. And, you know, cast it out and just wind it back in like a buzzbait. It skips. It's a little more subtle than a buzzbait. You can fish it over grass. You can fish it anywhere you want. They also make a variety of hooks with a little bit of weight on them. Little 1/8 ounce weight here. One thing about the toad is it wants to roll over. So now your hook's going to be down like that. But if you pause for a second, it'll roll back again.
And it doesn't matter if it's upside down. I noticed
It doesn't.
unless you're in grass, and then it's a pain in the ass. But you can always bury the point too, which I've done a lot, just because it just flips over, and I don't want to stop and let it try to roll back over, and it really doesn't, and it's just pain. So the weight counterbalances that.
Just a little weight. You only need like an 1/8 ounce.
It doesn't even take much to do it. But
Stanley makes this. This is packaged for Stanley. This is made by Mustad. They also make one that they pour a little weight on. They call it the Swim Max. But, I mean, everybody makes a hook like this. Owner makes a hook like this. They all do. Okay? So, toad hook. They make doubles, too. Same concept, but a double hook. Now, Z-Man got in the game, and this is very interesting because it's a Elastec. Problem is, you can't run a screw into the Elastec, and I've been experimenting with this toad. This weighted, old school, belly-weighted Gamakatsu 5/0 Superline hook, which is a Superline EWG with a belly weight, rigs up awesome on here. And it has this is buoyant. So that weight takes care of that problem. And you get the one that's an 1/8 ounce, and it works great. So toads are nothing more than soft plastic winding frogs. That's all they are.
And they skip, they do skip really well.
And they have that nice, subtle,
really good bubble trail.
plop, plop, plop. The ribbit is a little louder than the horny toad. And those two came out about the same time.
Yeah.
They're also awesome trailers on swim jigs.
You don't even have the ribbit there.
How
in the hell can you talk about toads and not have a Stanley ribbit there?
My hand, when I was back there grabbing frogs,
you make 2 trips, man.
Man, I was like ribbits.
You can't have a show without the.
I probably got a blood trail.
The Stanley toad.
I probably got a blood trail going back that aisle. I also had the big bite bait. I'm like,
and the other one is the bull ribbit. I mean, you can't have a show without the bull ribbit.
It's crazy, man.
But it's all levels of sound is what it's all about, and bubble trails and the fine bubble trails and the subtle sound, just like the popping frog, the subtle movements of a popping frog, or the harder twitch of the rod tip gives you that plunk plunk, or that real subtle splash splash. You got to know when to do both. That's what these things do. And I've seen it where the ribbit outproduces the horny toad, and I've seen it where the horny toad outproduces the ribbit,
and the bull ribbit outproduces
and the bull ribbit out cleans them all out. So it's just a different sound, and you got to mess with those. And they're so easy to fish, and you can cover so much water with them.
I've actually found the toad style baits really come into play a little earlier than the hollow body frogs.
Yeah.
Around grass.
I don't know.
I have found that. I've found that numerous times. Now, in our part of the world, it's like early May, if you want a ballpark figure. I found that the toad style bait, especially on big grass flats,
Father's Day.
And then when you get into June, then the regular hollow body frog seems
when that bite really kicks ass.
You'll
catch them on.
I wouldn't say
toads
it's
too. I
wouldn't say it's a hard and fast rule.
It's not.
I wouldn't call it like fish to toad. From May the 1st until. But
no,
generally speaking, I found the toad to be a really good choice a little earlier than the hollow body frog in our part of the world on grass,
Yeah.
on grass. And then the other thing that we talked about a couple weeks ago, particularly with the horny toad, is its merit as a trailer.
Yeah.
On a swim jig. Oh my.
Yeah.
But
this is a frog show.
You gotta mention toads. You gotta mention toads. And they're simple. You cast them out and you reel them in.
And it's so good for covering water, especially if you really think there's a frog bite. Listen, we never know. And you can't just fish a frog in a 50-yard stretch, a toad in a 50-yard stretch or some kind of topwater in a 50-yard stretch and say, oh, topwater isn't working today. Okay. The frog isn't working today because I fished this little bank with it and never got bit. You have to have that frog rigged up, and you got to have that toad rigged up if that's where you're going to throw all the time. And you need to throw it in many, many different times during the day. Pick it up, throw 10 casts on the spot, but don't just throw it that 10 casts and put it away for a day and say they're not biting a frog. Can't tell you how many times you made a move and then you got on a bank that had fish that were willing to hit a frog, and you loaded the boat with 4-pounders on frogs. Or you pulled up on a strip of grass and all of a sudden you're whacking them on frogs at 11:30, but you tried frogs all morning, never got bit. So don't be that guy. Don't be, oh, they're not hitting a frog today. Well, they're not hitting a frog at 7 a.m. or they're not hitting a frog at 11 a.m. or they're not hitting a frog at 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. You just got to check. You got to make sure that all three of those time periods, they're not biting. But it only takes a couple casts, couple 5, 6 casts, 10 casts to figure that out. But don't put it away right away. Don't say, man, the frog isn't working today, and shove it away. Now, if the wind's blowing heavy and there's lots of wave activity, a frog isn't going to be your bait. It's probably not going to be the one to throw. So, then you put it away. But, if it's, relatively calm situations and there is that cover there and there is some bait that's working and there is this and there is that, you throw it many times over throughout the day. Don't give up on it. So, and I think my point is with the horny toad or the different styles of toads is the sound. Mess around with the sound a little bit, definitely. But for me, it's the black with the yellow swirl. That's my bait of choice, and the white. And then Stanley, it's the
green pumpkin
shad, or green pumpkin shad. Yeah.
In toads.
So
I'm going to be green pumpkin, black, and white. Those are my three. I always make sure I have green pumpkin, black, and white, and then I always make sure I have the regular size and some bull ribbit, the big thumper. It's actually more like
I like ribbits.
It's actually, the bull ribbits actually doesn't really thump. It's more like a big floppy bubble trail.
It really is. It's a blah, 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 and it just,
I like it, man.
Just grinds up the water and puts
like it.
A big sound and a big bubble in there, and I like it too.
I think it's a great product that they have. I really do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So good stuff. So we just had a great trip down there, and we learned a lot. We didn't learn a lot, but we reiterated a lot of stuff about frog fishing while we were down there, and really put the icing on the cake. When you catch 100+ fish or more on a frog in 3 days, you learn a lot. You see a lot of scenarios, and you work a lot of scenarios. And we were fortunate to fish grass. We were fortunate to fish mats. We were fortunate to fish laydowns, and we were fortunate to fish undercut banks with the frogs. And we've seen the importance of all the things we talked about tonight. And one thing you didn't talk about, George?
I'm not done.
Adjusting your hooks.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and you're like Mr. Hook Adjuster. I just kind of go with it. If they're going to make a frog, they make it to work properly.
Well, and that's actually a good point, Mike,
Yeah.
because most of the time
Yeah.
they do work
Yeah.
properly.
That's who I am. Plus, those freaking hooks are so hard to bend.
So one thing that I've done for years is when I'm in a tough bite where I'm missing fish, and too many to tolerate, I adjust my hooks, like Mike says. So if you look at the hook, let me get my pliers here. If you look at the hook, most of the time that's great.
Yeah.
Most of the time that take that up and give him a close up, Mike.
Yep.
Most of the time having that hook lay, it's what you want. You do not want to do this. What I'm going to tell you, what we're about to talk about here, you do not want to do if you're going to be fishing timber, boat docks, hardcover. No, you don't want that. But that's a perfect setup right there. But if you get those days, where they're missing it, or they're not necessarily missing it, but you're not necessarily getting a hook in them because they're not eating it real good, which is basically what it boils down to. You're going to take this point and you're going to open it up. So you want this point to come up just a little bit. So you're going to come in here. Make sure you don't mess up your barb, okay? Right where that hook makes the bend, you grab a hold of that and just kind of rock it back and forth a little bit. Okay?
Just do the one so you can see the difference.
It's subtle. Yeah, you're right. That's a good idea. Do that.
I hate doing it. It's just the hooks are so strong. That's it. I think that's what
Rock
it does.
it a little bit, and then
it just tweaks it a little bit.
I like to open it a little bit. So you grab it from behind, and you just take it out a little bit. Get it off that body a little bit. And you can see.
Yes, it's up and it's up.
This hook here is original, and the other hook is just up and out a little. It's offset a little bit. I can see it from back here, Mike. I can see it picked up and out a little bit from back here. And, now if you're working that frog and they're sucking that thing down like nobody's business and you're down in the crushers, you don't need to do that. But if you're like stinging them and losing them, you might want to do that. And that's just a little hook tweak. And it works. It works.
But you better mark that frog, because I'm telling you, you throw that thing around any kind of tree or any kind of dock and it's hung up instantly.
Yeah, it'll grab that wood on you.
It grabs everything. So you gotta mark it somehow. Put a little X on top of it, or
yeah, you can just look at it. You can just see the hook.
I don't know, man. It's hard to look at when you're scrambling around and fish are biting and you're trying to tie a frog on and one just ripped out and it's leaking water and you can't stand it, you're in a hurry. You got a better mark it. Put an X on top of it or something. You're not looking at the top of it.
I just look at the hooks.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Too much.
That's what I do.
It's too subtle to see that.
Not to the trained eye.
Too subtle.
And as you admitted, you don't do that.
I don't do it.
Yeah, so you're not going to notice it.
Yeah, but when you're using all your equipment in your boat, it'd be nice to have X's on top of it. Just a hint.
Yeah.
Just something for you.
I'll get right on that.
Yeah. Mark them for me. Like Dewey would say, mark it, or Ray Scott would say, mark it, Dewey. All right. Who we got here? We got Tim Maynard with great comments. I appreciate all those comments, Tim. South Jersey, what's up, man? How you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Thanks for stopping in. Matthew Weimer giving some great comments and some great commentary. I appreciate that. Lots of stuff about frogs and little tips. I love that. Troy Lefevre, how you doing? Don't dip Z-Man baits and die. Exactly. Everybody knows that, Troy. I guess you found out. I'm not busting on you, buddy. I'm laughing with you. What else we got? Greggy Plank. Yep. Pincho, you love that. There's tons of grass on Pincho. And this year it's going to be a matted mess. So you better get the big rod out for sure.
So, Mike, how would you like to have a 35.36 pound 5-fish limit and come in third?
Yeah, I saw that, man.
How would you like
to
be
29.95 and come in out of the money? Not even close.
30.22 and come in 20th.
Yeah.
20 bags over 30 pounds.
I know. What is going on down there?
The 6th of May on Lake Okeechobee. 3 big fish were 8.03, 8.37, 8.38. So they were all, 5 to 8 pounders.
Unbelievable.
And you're just flying back up the lake, high-fiving. You got the dirty 30.
Yep.
You're about to whoop ass on everybody, and they're just gonna make a statue of you.
Yeah.
And you don't even get a check.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
How awesome is that?
I think it's so unbelievable.
Yeah.
I tell you, if you're ever worried about Lake Okeechobee, you don't have to worry about it. There's plenty of big fish in there.
Well, what's interesting is the spawn season on Lake Okeechobee, which is November until June. And that was a big wave of spawners that rolled up.
Unreal.
And the looky-loos got on it.
I can't believe how many guys figured that out, though. That's what I don't understand.
It was a local team tournament.
Yeah. Let's go. This is only the 10th, so it's only a few days after that. We should go down.
Moon's gone.
Moon's gone, yeah. Moon's gone.
She gone.
Because I tell you, that place can be very stingy down there. And the problem is, if you go anywhere past like week and a half, 2 weeks from now, you can't fish. It's too hot. Or you only go out for like 3 hours in the morning and leave. 4 hours, maybe.
Yeah, the heat cycle's coming on.
The heat cycle's coming, so it's going to be ugly there. But anyway, I do want to thank our folks from St. Croix and the rep group, Duncan and Lewis, for inviting us down to their plantation. It was just a great time. A lot of history down there. That's where we went over the bridge that Martin Luther King did his march on. And that was in Selma. A lot of history down there. A lot of what would they call that? Type of history. What's the word for that?
Important.
Yeah. There was a word anyway. But a lot of history down there and very interesting place. Really cool stuff down there. Fishing was unbelievable. The hospitality was great. Those guys were really, really friendly. They didn't have to do this for us, and I don't even know why they did, but we had a great time. I
liked fishing of a wide variety of the St. Croix rods.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier in the show tonight, I've fished them hard and heavy for the last 20 years. They're some of my favorite rods ever are in that Legend Elite line. And I fished the first generation of Mojo. This is the third generation of Mojo.
Very good.
And the second generation of Mojo.
Yep.
And it is
really good.
Very good.
The second generation Bass X. How about that? Phenomenal.
I did not fish that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I fished it.
And then we got on a flipping bite. And when you're on a flipping bite, when you're just cracking them like crazy, you can really dissect a rod, and that the feel, the sensitivity. I was fishing a Victory 7.3 medium heavy.
I was fishing a Mojo, and I couldn't believe how many times I comment to you how sensitive it was for those bites.
Yeah, and
Some of those,
they were all there. It either felt like your line was scraping down bark, or it was just like a little tiny tick.
Yeah,
Even it was crystal clear.
Yeah, unbelievable.
With the wind blowing.
Yeah, I was very impressed.
I will tell you this, but I'm not going to tell you this. We fished a couple other little things down there too that we can't talk about. Let me just tell you, there's some interesting stuff coming down the road. Come on, how about it?
I thought we said we weren't going to say nothing.
We didn't say anything. The boat that we fished was rigged with.
I don't think we're allowed to say that either.
Some stuff that we can't really talk about yet either.
Yeah, we fished prototype. It was for us.
But let me just tell you,
for George and I,
start saving
for George. Yeah, for George and I, what was really cool about it was it was prototype weekend. We fished a lot of prototype stuff down there that nobody in the country has even seen yet.
We had a lot of fun because the boat they gave us to use. I mean, we all fished together, but they put us in our own boat, which was a beautiful boat. But it was rigged up with a 15 Helix.
Yep.
On Mega Live. Well, we put it on Mega Live. And a 12 Helix.
Yep. On
side imaging.
Yep.
I mean, we ran it on side imaging.
Yeah.
And the bluegill beds.
What was that thing?
It was the
tracking system.
Yeah, the Mega I can't think of the name of it.
Yeah.
But the bluegill beds on the side imaging were insane.
No math.
You could mark the bluegill beds and then back off of them and drop your Raptors and fan cast the bluegill beds and just friggin' smash them because they were up there stalking them little bluegills.
That side imaging on that is unbelievable to show that.
Crystal clear,
the bluegill
target
beds.
Lock. Thank you, Sam.
Target lock. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so it had target lock on it.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we've used the target lock before, but not in depth.
Yeah.
We were target locking.
We were.
And we So I can't wait until we get the green light to tell you about several other products.
Yeah.
It's
coming.
I can't wait. But in the meantime,
and we were going to go rogue, but we're not going to go rogue.
We're not going to break the code.
I'm not going rogue.
We're not going to break the code. So, yeah, that's our frog show.
Yep. Beautiful.
Tune in. Get a chance tomorrow. Watch this elite tournament at Lay Lake.
Yep.
It is tight.
It is. It's pretty cool how they're fishing too. There's the current guys and the grass guys.
They got a shad spawn going on in the morning.
They got all kinds of stuff.
You're going to see how these guys attack a shad spawn. The one lake that Mike and I fished had a minnow spawn.
Yeah,
because there was no shad in the lake.
We called it a shad spawn until we went over and investigated.
Went over and looked at them because we were catching fish off of it, and it was pretty hot.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys are fishing the water willow.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys are fishing the current at the tail race. So, anyways,
all right, guys.
Our show for tonight.
Next week, Thursday, we're going to have a wrap up for the SummerSlam. We're going to give you a little bit more of the directions of how it's going to go. So, anybody fishing that, make sure you stop in and check it out. Please like and share all of our social media. Check it all out. And share it and comment about what you'd like to see on the show and how you like to show, and let us know how we're doing. Kate always checks that stuff out for us. And man, we love doing it. And until next time, we'll see you in the next Tackle Shop Live.
Sunny day, right there you took my breath away. Young and pretty, was it just a dream? The next day you called me up. You told me I'm your little buttercup. You came over and you fell into my arms. Well, I know what
Yeah,
I
we just
feel.
fished outside of
Please
Salina.
tell me your love is real.
Or I'm sorry,
You
Selma,
make me smile when I
Alabama.
think of you.
And
If I
fish on
feel down,
plantation.
knowing how you blue, I can't get enough. You make me happy, I feel so fine. Oh, how I wish that you were mine. I can't get enough. Oh, please I woke up all
Thanks, Jimmy.
sweat, with chills running down my neck. I'm going crazy from just the thought of you. A long blonde hair and your beautiful smile. Your sense of humor makes it all worthwhile. Don't make me wait, it's not a funny game.